Hello everyone, my name is Elite Trainer Kenway. Last week I showed off my massive collection of over 6,300 Pokemon. But that got me thinking, with the amount of money I've poured into my home collection, just how much would it actually cost to build a brand new Living Dex from scratch in 2024? So let's talk about it. Now, before we get started, let's define what a Living Dex is. A Living Dex means that in your Pokemon Home account, you would have exactly 1,025 Pokemon, one of every species. It doesn't matter if your Sandshrew is from Kanto and your Sandslash is from Alola, and it doesn't matter if you don't have all forms of Rotom. What matters is that you have one of each species in your Pokemon Home account. Because some trainers have varying opinions on the legitimacy of Pokemon caught in Pokemon Go, I'm going to separate this guide into two categories. Category 1, building a Living Dex with minimal influence from Go. Category 2, building a Living Dex using as many Pokemon as you can from Pokemon Go. For both categories, I'm going to assume you have just a Switch and a year-long subscription to Pokemon Home. So we won't be including either of those in our estimates. We're also not going to discuss taxes since they vary from state to state and country to country. Are we good? Good. So let's get started with Category 1. For Category 1, the only Pokemon we'll be transferring from Pokemon Go will be Meltan, Melmetal, Mew, Celebi, Jirachi, and Victini. The good news here is that Pokemon Go is completely free, meaning that these Pokemon are all completely free. All you need to do for Meltan is create an account in Pokemon Go, send one Pokemon from Go to Home, and you'll receive a mystery box which you can use to spawn Meltans. Once you receive 400 Meltan candies, you can evolve one of your Meltans into a Melmetal and then send that Melmetal into Home. There is a special research free to all players that will give you Mew, Jirachi, Celebi, and eventually Victini. These can all be sent to Pokemon Home as well. For the next step, I looked at the list of unobtainable Pokemon for Sword and Shield, their DLCs, Scarlet and Violet, their DLCs, and Legends Arceus. If you purchase all 5 games with their DLC packs, you have access to 994 Pokemon. GameStop currently has Pokemon Sword and Shield with their DLCs for $54.99 each. Scarlet and Violet are a little more expensive, coming in at $85 per game with their DLCs included. Meanwhile, Pokemon Legends Arceus is still being sold for $55 on their website. So far, with 994 Pokemon available, we're sitting at already a steep $335. The good news here is that you don't need to buy Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, and you don't need to buy Let's Go Pikachu or Eevee. Every Pokemon covered by those 4 games are also covered by these games, with a few exceptions we're about to talk about. In order to obtain the rest of these Pokemon, we are going to need a 3DS with Bank. Now, if we head over to eBay, we'll quickly see the price for a 2DS with Pokemon Bank can run you anywhere between $80 to $150. And the reason that we're talking about the 2DS and not the 3DS is simply because the 2DS is cheaper and we're trying to do this as cheaply as possible. So, taking the average, you should be able to find a 2DS with Pokemon Bank for around $115. Now that we have our 2DS, let's talk games. With either Ultra Sun or Ultra Moon, you have access to all of these Pokemon. If you're wondering why I opted to go to the Ultra games instead of Pokemon Let's Go and BDSP, it's because Spinda cannot be sent from BDSP, so the only way to get it is to send it from Bank. And since we have to have a Gen 7 game for Spinda, we may as well get the Kanto Pokemon there as well. Thankfully, we don't need both Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, only one of them will do. Both games will run you about $30 on eBay. Right then, that leaves us with just 13 Pokemon. Patrat and Watchog, Fearow, and the Elemental Monkeys can all be caught in either X or Y, but Skitty, Delcatty, and Deoxys has to be caught in either Omega Ruby or Alpha Sapphire. The Gen 6 games will run you about $25 each, so you just need $50 to get one Kalos game and one Hoenn game. But here's where I have some good news. You remember when we talked about Sword and Shield's DLC? Well, most of those Pokemon can be found in Scarlet and Violet, with the exception of Ammonite, Omastar, Kabuto, Kabutops, and Xerneas and Yveltal. However, since we need to get X or Y anyway, we may as well save some money on one of Galar's DLCs. So you can either get Sword's DLC and X, or Shield's DLC and Y, but you don't actually need both of Galar's DLCs to complete this. So that brings our total to 1,023 Pokemon, with Hoopa and Volcanion still missing. Unfortunately, there's no legitimate way to get either of these Pokemon on any 3DS or Switch game, meaning your only hope would be to trade for one or wait around for Go to release Hoopa and Volcanion. Given Go's current schedule, Hoopa and Volcanion would likely be available in Go Fest in 2026. Thankfully, Amazon has a $30 action replay that can be used to recreate the events that gave you these two Pokemon. So if you wanted to build a full Living Dex from scratch, minus Volcanion and Hoopa, you're looking at $510 plus taxes and shipping. but would it be cheaper if you used Go? In Pokemon Go, you can catch every Pokemon from Kanto, Johto, Hoenn, Unova, and Hisui with the recent release of Enamorus and Basculin. Unfortunately, we still need Legend Arceus for Arceus, Phione, and Manaphy. You still need both Sword and Shield as well as one DLC and Scarlet and Violet and their DLCs. With all of that, we have access to 1,017 Pokemon, but we still need a 2DS and just one of the Ultra games. So if you wanted to build a Living Dex starting completely from scratch with no games, you're looking at spending at least a minimum of $480. But there's one more thing. I'm willing to help save you $180 if you reach out to me on Discord or Twitter. Links are down below. If you reach out to me and tell me that you're working on a Living Dex, I will transfer you 2 boxes from my bank to your home. These 2 boxes will contain every Pokemon you need from X and Y, Oras, and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon that isn't available on the Switch. And yes, this includes the legit event, Hoopa, and Volcanion. This is a service that I will offer to anyone serious about building a Living Dex. Now, the OT on most of these Pokemon will read Kevin, but I will send them to you free of charge. I will be happy to do this for anyone who reaches out to me on Twitter or Discord to let me know that they're working on a Living Dex. I'll be happy to offer this service as long as Bank is still working. If you reach out and I send you these boxes, you will be able to build your own Living Dex with just Scarlet and Violet plus DLCs, Legends Arceus, and Sword and Shield with only one DLC. So that's pretty much it. If you need help with your Living Dex, feel free to reach out. And if you want to see my full home collection of over 6,300 Pokemon, check that out right here. I hope you guys have a fantastic week and I'll talk to you very soon. Peace.